freed after 5 years of captivity, and Sergeant Bo Bergdahl doesn't even call his mother. Bizarre behavior from Sergeant Bergdahl. Why won't he even call his own parents? And when will Sergeant Bergdahl come home? On the Record investigates. Plus,
Obama replenished the enemy.
5 terrorists on the loose in Qatar.
It's a 5-to-1 deal, and we've sent 5 enemy combatants, terrorists, back to the battlefield.
Tonight, a terrorism expert who says the Taliban is on steroids. And
everything they did to me was out of anger.
What you haven't heard from Greta's new interview with our sergeant in a Mexican prison.
Please get me out of here.
On the Record takes you to Mexico tonight. Hello, everyone. I'm Kimberly Guilfoyle in for Greta Van Susteren. Now, first tonight, more than a week after Sergeant Bo Bergdahl's release, he still hasn't contacted his parents. Why not even a phone call? And is he any closer to coming home to the U.S.? The Wall Street Journal's Jason Bellini joins us. Jason, thanks for being with us tonight.
Kimberly.
This is what people are wondering at home. Wouldn't you think being held in captivity that amount of time with the Taliban amongst terrorists, you would want the warmth and comfort at least of your own family?
Well, here's what we do know is that he's been offered that choice, and that's significant. So he's chosen not to do this at this point. And what the military is saying, the Joint Task Force on Recovery is working with him, saying that, you know what, in these situations, it sometimes takes up to a week for someone to want to call home, but they're not saying the reasons why. But it may have a lot to do with the severity of his case. One of the things we are learning is that he says that he was tortured, that he spent time in confinement, solitary confinement, and what that can do to your head. It's really hard to imagine. So what the particulars are, his exact reasons, we don't know that yet.
So regardless of the circumstances of his departure from the base and getting into the hands of the Taliban, he was there for 5 years. We don't know exactly what went on. We will find out at some point. But perhaps there's even some resentment issues towards his family. We don't know because he's doing this reintegration.
Right, and we also don't know what the psychologists from the military are advising him to do. They're there assisting him. Their role in this phase, they're calling this phase 2, a 3-phase process, is to work on the reintegration. And so they've been trying to keep him away from what we understand from media reports. That could make things far more difficult based on their experiences with the past. From, you know, they've looked at the history of this from Vietnam War, from the Korean War, what to do with POWs.
But when you think about it, there's such a tremendous amount of controversy, a firestorm really, because on both sides, you even have Democrats upset and questioning the way that this was, as they think, mishandled. Even high-ranking senators like Dianne Feinstein that aren't pleased with the situation. So if an individual like Bo Bergdahl was hearing this, it could impact some of the reintegration process, which can take as long, 6 months or more.
6 months or more. And then also, the public polling that's now coming out, and we're finding out that the public, by and large, is not in support of his rescue. That would be a very difficult thing to come home to. They're going to bring him back eventually to Texas in this integration process. But how long it will take, that's not known. So much of that depends on what goes on in these meetings with this team that's with him. And they haven't even begun the process of really debriefing him. And that's complicated because he needs to have be advised of his right to an attorney when that happens, because there's going to be an investigation, as we know.
You're absolutely right. As a former prosecutor, he's looking at, court-martial. He's looking at charges anywhere from being, AWOL, a deserter. And then can you imagine when you look up and you saw TV and the people that you were serving with aren't supporting you, saying that you were a deserter? There's a lot of facts and information coming out, and he's going to have to face that at a certain point.
Well, and it sounds like they're trying right now to just try to stabilize the situation after this highly traumatic experience of 5 years, and then get into those details, because, again, once that happens, once they start asking for the particulars of how he managed to get into Taliban hands, that's when he can exercise the right to an attorney.
All right, we're going to see a lot to follow, and as you and I were saying, a very interesting and fascinating case. Jason Bellini from the Wall Street Journal, thank you.
Thank you.
So, did President Obama let 5 terrorists go in exchange for a deserter? Right now, growing outrage from both sides of the aisle over the administration's handling of the Bergdahl deal.
It's a mixed bag at best.
The fact of the matter is that these are 5 of the most dangerous folks in the world.
These are killers. These are smart, tough leaders and killers. And we got back for it a traitor.
We have no information on how the United States is actually going to see that they remain in Doha.
What's going on with our country is inconceivable.
And joining us to discuss this very controversial case, our top political panel, the Weekly Standard's John McCormick, the Washington Examiner's Susan Ferriccio, and the New York Times' Louise Story. Thanks for being with me tonight. A lot to talk about, some new developments today as well. Louise, I'll begin with you. Now you're seeing people like Senator Dianne Feinstein come out high-ranking, upset, dissatisfied about the way this has been handled.
Well, if there's one thing that will set people in Congress off and make them go berserk, whatever party they're on, is if they were not notified by the president about things they're supposed to know. And, you know, in general, when you transfer prisoners out of Guantanamo, you're supposed to give 30 days notice to Congress. That didn't happen for various sensitive reasons, according to the president. And so it's not surprising people in both parties are rankled over this.
Yeah, well, John, one of these, the reasons was that supposedly Sergeant Bergdahl, or now he wants to be referred to as Private, wasn't having any mental health problems. We don't know at the time. Was he having physical condition problems? They said 30 days, his life was in danger, his health was in jeopardy. But some of those facts haven't borne out.
That story has completely fallen apart, and the Democrats are flailing all over the place here. They've basically resorted to complete dishonesty, I would say, in arguing that, well, if you didn't want this to happen, if you didn't want to trade 5 high-level Taliban commanders for Bergdahl, that you didn't care about the troops. Simultaneously, while they're saying you don't care about the troops, they're attacking the troops. They are attacking the men who served with Bergdahl. They're the ones who are coming out here and saying, he deserted us. We know this for a fact. Every piece of evidence leads us to that conclusion. But, you know, it's the troops, actually, those who have served, who are most opposed to this deal. A new poll came out from the Pew this afternoon that showed that veterans, U.S. veterans, opposed President Obama's decision to hand over 5 terrorists for Bergdahl, 68% to 16%. So this is a bad deal for the president, a bad deal for Democrats, and it's going to continue to dog them.
All right, John brings up a great point, Susan, because, you know, the optics are bad from left to right on this. I mean, you really have finally shocking bipartisan irritation, you know, in D.C. over this. The president not polling well at this. You heard the Pew poll referenced by John. So what do you, from a communication standpoint, where do you think they need to go from here?
Well, it's interesting what you said about the bipartisan discontent, because I see what's happening now as sort of an exclamation point on sort of a growing sentence of discontent from Democrats. They have been talking about this at a kind of a low murmur for years. They have problems with the way the president manages. They have problems with the way he's not engaged with them. Many of them have been in Congress since the days of President Bill Clinton, who was very hands-on, very detail-oriented. This president's not that way. It has led to consequences that are potentially politically disastrous for the party. And so that's what I think you're hearing right now. People are just at the point in the Democratic Party where they're sort of getting fed up. And so you're hearing them get really vocal, whereas before they were talking about this in the hallways, but they were being a little more private about it and much more protective of the president. So where we go from here is really going to be interesting to see if they're still going to be protective of him or if we're going to start to hear a lot more discontent from the party.
Well, and again, let's look at what the next play, the move is going to be, Louise, because people are saying, well, perhaps he's trying to, this was just the beginning, a little bit of the siphoning out, and he's going to go ahead and empty out Gitmo, especially if there's a chance that the Republicans could take the Senate. He's got to do it and act before then.
This could certainly be part of a bigger picture thing that we'll be seeing playing out.
Yeah, because, John, I mean, he couldn't leave an American over in Afghanistan, wrap things up and button it up if he's going to go ahead and leave Bergdahl there. He's got those guys in Gitmo. I mean, it makes sense to me.
Well, a number of people have suggested maybe the real goal here was just shutting down Gitmo. Maybe the goal wasn't to get Bergdahl back. That was just a pretext to help get these most dangerous guys out of there. You know, there were multiple reviews conducted by different people down at Gitmo. And President Obama, when he wanted to shut this thing down back in 2009, he appointed his own task force. And as Stephen Hayes reported in the Weekly Standard, even President Obama's own people, they identified 48 guys that were too dangerous to let go under any circumstances. And these 5 were among those 48 at Gitmo. So we've released some of the most very dangerous, you know, we're talking about people who reported directly to Osama bin Laden, who were running field camps possibly. They're just really bad guys. And that's the big thing we got to focus on here is who these people were and what the price we paid.
Well, it's inexcusable. There really is no justification for it, especially when you look at their terrorist pedigree. All right, panel, stay with us. Well, the 5 Taliban leaders released from Gitmo may have to stay in Qatar for a year, but listen to this. They are living in private villas along with their families, all expenses paid. And we are talking about dangerous terrorists.
Obama replenished the enemy.
You have now the 5 worst enemies of America returning to the battlefield in Afghanistan potentially.
I don't think anybody should doubt the capacity of the United States of America to protect Americans.
I heard John Kerry this morning say, you know, don't worry about them in Doha. You can't help but worry about them in Doha.
As we speak right now, they are reintegrating, at least with the leadership of the Taliban.
It's a 5-to-1 deal, and we've sent 5 enemy combatants, terrorists, back to the battlefield.
Well, do you feel safer? And our next guest says the Taliban is now on steroids thanks to the release of the Taliban Dream Team. Fox News Mideast expert Waleed Fairs joins us. Waleed, thanks for being on the program tonight.
Sure.
You're on to something here because the American people are agreeing with you. When you look at the polling here, this is not good for the president. Where do we stand now from a security standpoint?
Look, Kimberly, what the American people needs to know is much more serious than what they know right now. These are not just 5 terrorists. These are not just 5 guys who are going to go back to the battlefield and fight individually. These are commanders. They can and will most likely move hundreds, if not thousands of jihadists across Afghanistan, maybe into Pakistan. Look at the incident that happened yesterday in Pakistan. And also, just because they are in Doha in Qatar, they are now meeting with and working with jihadi networks and leaders who go in and out to Qatar. So what we're talking about, yes, as I said in my piece, Taliban on steroid. They are going to mobilize more and more cells around the world, and unfortunately, we may pay the price.
Well, you make a great point there, talking about the mobilization of terrorist cells, and they intend to do just that. The question is whether or not we're going to be able to get our act together, be able to pinpoint these guys, keep an eye on them so they don't get lost in the stream, and be able to take them out before they can harm America again, because, in fact, they will do just that if they are allowed to. Unfortunately, it seems that this administration is tone deaf about the terrorist threat level and what, in fact, they have just done.
The deal is so bad that we can't even do much about it. We gave them to Qatar. We have a base in Qatar. We have a deal with Qatar that they, i.e. the Qatari government, which, by the way, is backing the Muslim Brotherhood, is sending funds to the jihadists. Saudi, Egyptians, Jordanians are very upset about the Qataris. So we didn't even consult with our allies in the region when we did that move. It is going to be a very serious mistake in the war on terror.
All right, real quick, is there any direct link through the most recent attack in Pakistan and this?
I do argue, yes. I was on Arab media, and many have agreed with me, that because the Taliban feel now that their leadership has reintegrated, that they have those leaders back with them, they are striking in Pakistan. Unfortunately, we expect that they will strike in other areas just because they feel that the United States cannot keep them, can jail them, but cannot keep them anymore. They feel much stronger, much morally higher.
All right, well, there you go. Waleed Fairs, our Fox Mideast expert. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Kimberly.
This is a Fox News alert, a classified briefing just wrapping up. White House officials briefing House members on the prisoner swap. Representative Adam Kinzinger was inside that meeting, and he joins us right now. Thank you for being with us this evening. What can you tell us at this hour?
Well, look, I had a briefing, and there was nothing classified about it. It was a lot of what you've seen in the media. And it was the administration trying to explain away a terrible deal, and they're having a very hard time doing that. And I think what actually hit me, too, was you had them say that, well, look, we're going to be out of Afghanistan in 2016, so American troops really aren't going to be that threatened by these 5 high-ranking Taliban officials. The interesting thing about that, though, is we've spent 13 years trying to help the Afghan people create a country that they can live peacefully in. And so while we may be reducing our troop presence, which I think in the long run is a mistake, the Afghan people and the Afghan military are going to have to face these 5 Taliban leaders that are going to go back, frankly, to Afghanistan and be hailed as legends, the survivors of Gitmo. This is a bad deal, and no matter how hard they try, you can't put perfume on this pig.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it seems that the American people are very upset about this, disheartened and quite concerned from a security threat level that this swap has been made already. And again, without proper consultation, citing exigent circumstances, the fact that they said that there's this proof of life video that warranted them violating the rules, going around everybody, including not even letting someone like Senator Dianne Feinstein know what was going on. And this is what we have to show for their sneaky work.
Yeah, look, they tried every effort to explain why they didn't notify Congress as required by law. they came up short. The reality is there were a lot of members that were notified of the bin Laden raid. That didn't get out. 2 years ago, they talked about the possibility of this exchange for Bergdahl. That didn't get out. But what happened is that 2 years ago, it was resoundingly opposed in a bipartisan way by members of Congress. And so the administration just figured, well, we don't want Congress to say no, so we're just going to go around Congress and do our own thing. And they have put Americans and the Afghan people in a very bad position here. One last point I want to make on this, too, is the president is in essence declaring the war on terror over. I hope he has an agreement from the Taliban and al-Qaeda that they're done with their war on terror, too, because he's basically said, well, look, it's the end of hostilities. We're releasing everybody, and we should negotiate with the Taliban. The Pakistanis are trying to negotiate with the Taliban, and 18 people were killed in the airport yesterday.
There you go. Exactly. So this is far from over. In fact, many people think it is just beginning and getting stirred right up again. This was kind of the rejuvenation they needed. You're a veteran of the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. I want to get you to respond to Secretary Kerry saying that reports claiming that the release of the Taliban members from Gitmo puts our troops at greater risk are, quote, baloney. Do you agree with this as a veteran?
It's absolutely bewildering that he would say that. I mean, he knows, what his comments did after Vietnam to hurt morale. This is not only hurting morale, this is actually putting American lives at risk. And it's funny that the secretary would say that because members of the administration admitted in the briefing today that this could potentially endanger American soldiers. So I think the administration, between Secretary Kerry and between the folks that briefed us, have got to get their message straight. This is putting Americans in danger. It is putting the Afghan people in danger. And just come out and admit it. I mean, just admit it and say that you thought this was worth it, but don't try to pretend like it's not an issue.
You're absolutely right. And then you can throw in Susan Rice into the mix there, too, because they're just all over the place from a communications standpoint.
That's right.
Very troubling. But thank you for that information from inside the briefing. And hopefully, others like yourself will continue to press for answers because, for sure, the American people want them and deserve them. Congressman, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for